Science,
engineering,
medicine,
business,
chemistry,
physics,
biology, humanities, cardiology,
computing, public health, global
aeronautics, science communication.
Hello everyone, I'm Gareth Mitchell. The eyes of much of the world are on this university and others as the coronavirus spreads and the race to defeat it intensifies. Today, one researcher offers an insider's view of one of our labs working on a vaccine. And we hear from an Imperial professor who's involved in coordinating the national research response to the pandemic, who has this stark message.
If only we'd been able to respond just maybe a week earlier on a global scale, and we'd taken this as seriously as we really needed to, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now. It's a remarkable thing just how important it is to respond very, very quickly.
And responses on video as our students in isolation around the world share their coronavirus diaries.
The Imperial College Podcast.
So, welcome along, everybody, and let's start with a little bit of news from around the college. Martha Nahar joins us, and Martha, celebrations are in order.
Yes, Gareth, Imperial did it. The team won University Challenge with a staggering 275 points against Corpus Christi Cambridge, who racked up 105 points at the end. It was Richard Brooks who buzzed in for Imperial for the first question, and Imperial pretty much didn't stop buzzing until the very end. The team delivered a solid performance and they dominated the final. Now everyone's been behind the team since the first match of University Challenge aired last year. They were led by team captain Caleb Rich, who performed brilliantly in the final. I had the pleasure of interviewing the team recently, and Caleb was telling me that he felt everyone played to their strengths and demonstrated a really good team effort. And of course, Brandon Blackwell, this season's love him or hate him figure, has earned somewhat of a superstar status and was a highlight during the final too. But on the whole, I think it was evident that the entire team were playing at their very best in the final.
Oh, you're not wrong. I was watching on Monday evening and the team were on absolutely stunning form. And I know I'm biased, but it really was brilliant telly. So what's the reaction been?
The reaction has been really positive so far, and I think that the win has really brought the Imperial community together. Especially during this really uncertain and difficult time, I think that the University Challenge win has been a positive bit of news that we can all celebrate. And the student community have sent their messages of congratulations to the team as well, which we captured on camera. The team themselves were really surprised to win. However, I was chatting to Connor McNeil, who's also on the team, and he actually told me he thought that they'd be able to win all along because he had so much faith in the team and their ability. And I think it's that confidence and that faith that really carried them through to the very end.
Absolutely. So for anyone who wants to watch this thumping victory and see if they can correctly answer as many questions as Team Imperial, how can they catch up on the show?
Yes, that's a great question, Gareth. So if you did miss out on watching the final of University Challenge, you can still catch it online on BBC iPlayer for a short while.
So check it out. Martha Nahar, thanks so much. And of course, huge congratulations to the victors. Now, Hayley Dunning is here. And for your news story, Hayley, we are thinking on a grand scale, like the universe.
Yeah, this is possibly answering the question of why the universe is made of stuff and not anti-stuff, essentially. So one of the biggest mysteries in physics is why matter and antimatter didn't obliterate each other at the start of the universe and the universe just didn't happen. But we know that the universe is made of stuff, matter. So why is that when antimatter and matter should be complete opposites of each other? They should annihilate each other. So physicists have been looking for a long time to try and find differences between some forms of matter and antimatter. And now they've looked at particles called neutrinos and a particular behaviour, and they seem to have found a difference between neutrinos and antineutrinos.
So how have they found this difference?
So essentially what they did is they created in this facility in Japan beams of neutrinos and antineutrinos. But more specifically, neutrinos and antineutrinos can come in three flavours. So there's tau, muon and electron. And they looked at one way that these can actually change between those two flavours. So from muon to electron. So they fired beams of muon neutrinos and muon antineutrinos from this thing, and then hundreds of kilometers further away in Japan, they detected what came out. And so they saw how many of these different types transformed into each other. And what they found is that more neutrinos change flavour than antineutrinos.
All right, and what does this tell us about neutrinos?
Yeah, it just seems to show that there's a fundamental difference in their behaviour, which means that they can't be complete opposites as they should be, and perhaps hint at why the universe can exist. So scientists have found some differences in particles called quarks, but those differences are not large enough to explain why the universe is made of stuff and not anti-stuff. But the neutrino difference appears that it might be large enough.
And so that explains why the universe is made of stuff.
Yep, and they're not 100% sure yet. There's still more experiments they want to do, gather more data, make sure some of the uncertainties have disappeared. But they say they're actually about 95% sure, which is a pretty good indication that this might be the answer.
And finally, what's Imperial's involvement in all this?
So a team from Imperial have been working with this big experiment in Japan for a long time, actually, from its inception, working out how it might actually operate. But they now work on several parts of it, including the statistics of the results that come out, checking that they are real.
Hayley Dunning speaking to me a little earlier on. You also heard there from Martha Nahar. Well, the name Imperial College London has become synonymous with global efforts to tackle the coronavirus. And we now gain a glimpse into the science and the scientists in the lab behind the scenes. Reporter Kieran Brophy managed to grab a few moments with Dr. Anna Blakeney, a researcher in one of the teams working on a vaccine for COVID-19.
Thanks so much, Anna, for joining us. You must be run off your feet at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a pretty crazy time so far.
So what is the latest on the vaccine? I suppose it's the question that everyone wants answered. When's it going to be ready?
Yeah.
When can we expect a COVID-19 vaccine?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously, we're not the only ones in the world that are working on it right now. So a number of different trials have started. We are still doing preclinical animal testing. So we've been getting some really positive results from that. Our first mouse studies are just finishing up. The next step is really to go into a tox study. So that's just to make sure basically that there's no safety side effects associated with the vaccine in animals. And then once that's wrapped up, we can start our phase 1 clinical trial. So that is set to commence in June of this year. Pivoting as we see this outbreak growing more and more is trying to include as many people as possible in these clinical trials. So we were initially going to do 30 people in our phase 1 trial. Now we're going to do 120, which is really quite large for a phase 1. And that's really just so we can try and vaccinate as many people as possible and really start to have an effect on the population even before it's a licensed vaccine. We've talked about trying to do up to 5,000 people in the phase 2 and possibly up to 2.5 million in the phase 3 if we're able to actually do that. So,
but Anna, on a personal level, what's life like in the lab? Everyone's working on something of such huge global significance. It must be hugely exciting.
Yeah, it's really, really exciting. So obviously, I mean, we're very passionate about vaccines in general. And one of the reasons for that is it's just a really positive way that you can impact humanity. So I think that's where personally my motivation and the motivation of the team comes in, because it seems more and more that a vaccine will actually be really necessary within society, just as far as, you know, preventing more people from getting it and possibly providing a herd immunity. So it's a good scientific test at the same time.
Yeah. Are you getting much sleep? Are people just exhausted or excited?
Yeah, it's been quite a weird time because, as you know, so all of Imperial is shut down except for kind of these key workers. So there are about 8 people in our lab that are key workers now. So it's pretty weird coming into a building where only a few people are working. Like, it just feels like kind of a ghost town, which is odd. And even just commuting to and from work, it's so quiet out. It's really eerie. I think I've just noticed this generally in the scientific community as well. Like, people are so open and so collaborative and just sharing everything right now. So some other people in our building are working on culturing the virus, and like we've been talking to them about just, sharing tips of what the best way to do that is and sharing cells, and they've gotten advice from other people as well. So it's really seemed like the scientific community has mobilized on really a global scale to be able to do all of this development, not for just for vaccines, but also the diagnostics and, understanding how the virus is changing over time as well. So it's quite an exciting time, albeit weird in the lab.
But before you go, Anna, you'll have to promise that you'll come back and let us know how you're all getting on.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be great. We don't necessarily have updates like every day, but it's kind of like every few weeks we have really exciting stuff happening. So yeah, that would be great.
Anna, thank you so much for speaking with us. We wish you and everyone in the lab all the best.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Anna Blakeney talking there to Kieran Brophy, and you can hear a longer version of that interview on Kieran's excellent Never Lick the Spoon podcast. With a name like that, it's pretty easy to find on your favourite podcatcher, and it's well worth it. That's Never Lick the Spoon with Kieran Brophy. So, one of the big questions at the moment is, why do some people get COVID-19 so much worse than others? One of those coordinating the national research response in tackling that question and many other aspects of the crisis is Professor Peter Openshaw of the National Heart and Lung Institute. One study within his purview brings together Imperial, Edinburgh and Liverpool, looking at the course of the disease and the effects of treatment. They've already taken over 5,000 samples from COVID-19 patients in the study across over 100 hospitals around England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. Maxine Myers has been speaking to Professor Openshaw, and he began by outlining the information they're gathering.
We're accepting any patient who has got a positive test for COVID-19. That's really an entry criterion for the study. So the sort of information we're looking for initially is basic information about the patient, like how old they are, whether they're male or female, whether they've got any risk factors that might make them have more severe disease. And the sort of risk factors which are coming out already are people who've had high blood pressure or heart disease or coronary artery disease in the past, and some patients with chronic lung disease seem to be more susceptible to getting severe disease. The main factor, actually, which has already come out from the study, is that being older, particularly if you're a frail older person, that's much, much more likely to mean that you have severe disease and you may develop low oxygen levels in the blood and you might need to go on to a ventilator.
I know you're very early within the study, but from what you've seen so far, is there anything that you've seen so far that's been surprising to you or has confirmed a few things?
So in terms of what the study's already confirmed, it's confirmed that asthma is a risk factor for admission, but it's also shown that actually people with a history of asthma don't usually suffer from very severe disease and rarely need mechanical ventilation. And that's very interesting because it's the same thing that we saw back in 2009 in the swine flu pandemic. At that time, we found that about 30% of the patients had a history of asthma, but actually they only stayed in hospital for half the amount of time that the people without a history of asthma stayed in hospital. And we had almost no deaths and virtually none of them needed mechanical ventilation. So that's interesting that it's the same pattern that's emerging now from the COVID-19 patients.
And what do you think, well, what do you hope would be the potential impact of the work?
So the potential impact of the ISRIC 4C study, as it's called, I think will be severalfold. First, it gives very rapid information to the Department of Health and to SAGE and to the government about the pattern of disease. Because we've already managed to recruit so many patients, we can already start to tell them what sort of healthcare demand there is and how to respond in terms of increasing the healthcare provision in specific areas. I think the more medium-term impact is going to be in providing samples for serological testing, for example, so that we can get a detailed map of when the patients are developing antibody responses, which we hope will mean that they're much less likely to be infectious, to infect other people. And also, we're going to be able to discover what sort of immune responses are seen in patients that progress to severe disease.
From your experience, from the very first case diagnosed in China to now, how surprised have you been about the speed in which this disease has spread?
So comparing this disease to the swine flu pandemic in 2009, I think what's amazed us is just how fast COVID-19 has taken off. You know, the very first case that was recorded was probably around December the 8th, and it wasn't really reported to the WHO until after Christmas, so December 31st or so. By comparison, the swine flu outbreak was slower to develop. There was more time to respond. And I think this one really took us all by surprise. It was quite shocking to see the speed at which this epidemic took off. And I would just say just how close the Chinese came to stamping this out completely. I think they were within a few cases, actually, of being able to eliminate this one, as they managed to do with SARS in 2002, 2003. If only we'd been able to respond just maybe a week earlier on a global scale, and we'd taken this as seriously as we really needed to, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now. It's a remarkable thing, just how important it is to respond very, very quickly.
So is it possible to eliminate the disease without a vaccine?
So in terms of eliminating the disease without a vaccine, if the infection has spread quite widely, particularly amongst young people, without causing particularly severe disease, that will already create quite a lot of immunity in the population. And then as the vaccines come online, and I do believe we will get vaccines, there are now 40 different vaccine projects underway, and I'm sure one or more of them will generate an effective vaccine that gives a lot of antibody. I think that, you know, a combination of that spread in the population of the natural disease plus a follow-up vaccination campaign could potentially eliminate this one from the globe, although there are always pockets, areas in the world which are very hard to reach with vaccines. You can never be quite sure that it's going to be possible to stamp a disease out unless you actually have the field trials. But I think it is conceivable that this one could be eliminated ultimately. Okay, in terms of lessons that we might learn from previous pandemics, I mean, we've witnessed the swine flu pandemic, and I think we learned an awful lot from that. I think what's been particularly helpful are the collaborations that were built up during the 2009 pandemic and which actually have continued ever since then in terms of getting people to work together. On a slightly more critical note, the investment that has been made by government in public health and in supporting the Public Health England has not really been so wonderful. You know, the repeated reorganisations of the public health services in the UK have been very detrimental. The way in which they've been fragmented and to some extent privatised over the past 10 years has been quite detrimental to our ability to respond.
And just finally, things like this project's unique in the sense that you'll be able to start reporting some results quite soon. I mean, do you have a time frame in mind and when you think you'll be able to start publicly sharing some of the data or the information you have so far?
The ISARIC 4C project is already sharing results from the study on a weekly basis with the Chief Medical Officer and therefore up to the government. And I hope that within the next week or two, we will be producing update bulletins on a weekly basis in the British Medical Journal. That's, I think, what we're hoping for, and we're just seeing whether that is going to be possible. But the aim of this project is to share information as widely as possible, as quickly as possible, so that everyone is well informed of how things are progressing and how we can try to mitigate the impact of this outbreak.
Peter Openshaw speaking there to Maxine Myers. And of course, you can keep up with that study and other coronavirus work at Imperial on our news website. That's imperial.ac.uk/news. Well, finally...
Hello!
Hey, how's it going?
Hi guys.
My name is Lydia. I'm a master's student on the Science Communication course.
I'm Ricardo, I'm a fourth year medic.
My name is Jade, I am a second year material science and engineering student.
My name is Kenna Castleberry, I'm an American master's student.
My name is Daisy, I'm studying a master's in science communication.
My name is Zacharias.
I'm James, I'm a first year Mech Eng undergraduate.
Where I currently am is back in Colorado.
Voices from our students around the world for whom studies continue, albeit remotely, as our lecture theatres and teaching labs remain closed. Welcome to the Corona Video Diaries, now online and across Imperial's social media. Students in isolation, helping the rest of us to feel less isolated. An idea that came from one of our postgraduates.
Hi there, my name is Mariana Kneppers. I am a student on the Science Communication Master's course here at Imperial,
and I'm originally from and currently in San Francisco, California. I'm currently doing an internship with the Imperial Press Office, producing media content, mainly videos that focus on anything that has to do with Imperial, really. So I've been home for about a month now, and I realized it's quite hard to film any footage of Imperial or about Imperial when I'm halfway around the world. So I got to thinking, and I reached out to some of the other Imperial students I know, and I asked them if they'd be willing to, answer a couple questions about their experience in isolation so far. It's just been a matter of editing those clips and, pulling a couple of videos from them.
Well, Mariana is working with Imperial's digital media producer, Martin Sayers. And as the material from the student video diaries came in, Martin was pleased with what he was seeing.
The material that came back was really good. I was surprised that what we did get, I was expecting, shaky footage or, half people's heads cut off or, anything, the sort of things that you normally get when people are not that experienced in producing their own home videos. But actually, it was great. Short 30-second clips, really informative, really good. And I think Mariana's managed to make a really nice package out of it.
Yes, one thing that struck me about it is how willing the students were to give advice.
Well, initially I gave Mariana a list of things that she ought to be asking them. So she sent those out. And so there was, how are you managing to stay positive during this time? What things are you missing about the college? They listened to the instructions, read the questions, and came back with some really, really good stuff.
Encouragement. COVID-19 will be over soon, hopefully.
Be grateful. Think of what you do have.
Stay focused, don't let this long break put you off working.
Be kind to yourself.
We have people from a variety of places contributing, quite a few who are still in London or around the UK. We have somebody who's living in France, and in the States, I'm in California, Kenna is in Colorado, and it almost acts as a kind of barometer to see how globally the quarantine and the pandemic is being handled. For some, it's a valuable perspective to have, especially the fact that it is a global crisis.
It is uplifting, yeah, and I think that was one of the aims that we were hoping for. We got a really nice broad cross-section of students from varying departments. It was really great to see how they were all working together.
What do you hope this video will achieve? What's so important to you, Martin, about making this film with the students?
The main aim of the video was obviously our students are not in college at the moment, so they need to be able to continue and doing what they would normally do, but also to show that even though they are stuck at home, they're still being really positive and still actually managing to get on with the work.
Just stay positive.
Keep positive.
Try and stay positive because this lockdown isn't going to last forever.
People are right there with you and supporting you no matter what happens.
Enjoy.
It gives people a feeling that they aren't alone in this experience, especially one that is so isolating. It kind of gives a glance into how other people are dealing with it, and it provides not only the comfort that you're not alone, but it gives you ideas of how to deal with it yourself and how to cope. Tips of being productive or ways to deal with mental health during this time, ways to keep in contact with friends and family all over the globe. So even producing the videos myself is very therapeutic in a way, and I didn't expect that.
The other day I was emailing a tutor and I said to her, don't worry because I've got my chin up and head down in the reading. And I think that phrase has sort of stuck with me since, so chins up, heads down, everybody.
Well, advice like that will get us all through this, won't it? Student voices in the Corona Video Diaries. To watch episode 1, scroll back through the timeline of @Imperial College on Twitter or visit our YouTube channel. Just search for Imperial College on YouTube. And I was there talking to the two producers, Mariana Knepers and Martin Sayers. And that brings this edition to an end. A quick reminder that, of course, you can catch up with everything that's going on at this crucial time via our news website. That's imperial.ac.uk/news. Well, I'm Gareth Mitchell. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.